Good morning, church. I don't know about you, but I am so grateful for the pastors that we have all around our city leading all of our Vineyard congregations. We have an amazing team, and we have this summer brought back to Vineyard Columbus a pastor to lead our sawmill community. Now, if you've been around Vineyard for a while, you would remember Ryan Snow. Ryan went out from Vineyard Columbus in 2005 to plant a Vineyard church in Toledo, the great city of Toledo. And he has come back here to join our team and to pastor our sawmill community. And Ryan and Libby are wonderful people, and they have a great family. They have 4 kids. God bless them as they continue to raise 4 amazing kids. And Ryan, one of the things I love about him so much, we were out in Phoenix this week for a great Vineyard National Conference for all of the Vineyard pastors. And Ryan and I rented motorcycles to ride up into the mountains to meet with God. So this is a man after my own heart. Would you give a warm Vineyard welcome for Ryan Snow as he brings this week's message?
Good morning. I think Eric and I thought we were actually going to meet God on our motorcycle ride. If you know anything about the city of Phoenix, you know that the people drive insanely fast. So there's a point where we were trying to obey the speed limit, but we were getting passed by people pulling in their Ford F-250s like, pontoon boats going 85 miles an hour. So the city of Phoenix, they like to drive fast. I want to say welcome to those of you who are online, those of you who are at our campuses, the Sawmill campus. It has been a joy, the East Campus. It's been a joy to get to meet several of you throughout the church community. And like Eric said, moving back to Columbus for our family has been awesome. As you can imagine, it's been somewhat challenging moving in a pandemic and transitioning after 16 years of life in Toledo. And just for you Buckeye fans, we've been the reason the Buckeyes have been so successful because we've been at the border holding back the force of darkness. And so I can't promise what's going to happen this year or for the next several years we're in Columbus, but that's why we've been so successful. It had very little to do with Tressel, Urban Meyer, or Ryan Day. So you can just thank me for what I did for the last 16 years right there at the border. Well, we are starting a brand new conversation that we've called simply Recover Your Life. And I don't know about you, but we are living in a time where it seems like many of us we like to go fast, we like to add more, we like to just kind of keep the motor in our lives going. And several years ago, about 10 years ago in fact, anybody own a Toyota Camry? Okay, well, I had one. It was a 1995 Hunter Green one, and when Libby, my soon-to-be bride, knew that I was driving a car that was that awesome, she's like, I have to marry this guy. He has a Hunter Green 4-door sedan that is held together by duct tape. And so, but about 10 or 11 years ago, Toyota had a massive recall on the Camry because the accelerator was getting stuck or locked in the accelerate position. Now, I've only had the privilege of driving 270 about 50 times in the last 50 days, but it's a lovely drive. And the whole drive, I'm thinking, can you imagine approaching, for those of you who know the Columbus area, the 270 I-71 intersection, and all of a sudden you realize my accelerator is locked. And it just is terrifying. I generally quote the 23rd Psalm when I'm on 270 anyways, but the whole point would be like, can you just imagine living life and being in a car where your accelerator's in this locked position? I think for many of us, if we're to be honest, we live our lives in a way in which our life feels like the accelerator is just locked. We just keep going and we keep going and we feel like this is normal. And what I'm going to communicate today, hopefully, is that this is very abnormal. In fact, this is not what God designed for us, that He has something so much better for us, and that is that we would have lives of rhythm. In an incredible book by a pastor named Lance Witt, he wrote this in his book, Replenish. He says, if we slow down at all, we have this low-grade nagging guilt that we aren't being productive. We can't relax. We can't sit still. We can't stop. We aren't quite sure how to stop the treadmill. The key to unlocking a sane pace in life is found in one word: rhythm. In a casino, which I'm sure none of you have been to, you're in church. In a casino, there's no sense of rhythm. The idea is that you don't want people gambling to have any sense of time, but we don't live in a casino. We live in a universe that flows with rhythm, and so our lives must follow that rhythm. This morning, we're gonna be talking about a God who created us to have lives of rhythm, and one of those rhythms we're supposed to have is the rhythm of rest. The rhythm of rest. This isn't just supposed to be a week in March when you go to Naples. This isn't supposed to be just something that happens late August when you go to the Outer Banks. This is to be a rhythm of our lives. But the mantra that many of us have kind of just lived in the American way is more, faster, add, build, scale. And that is where so many of us are living lives. We live in a world where it's almost impossible to put work down. How many of you right now have one of these in your pocket? It's like it follows you and it tells you, you cannot put me down. Statistics would say you and I touch our phone somewhere between 10 and 17, every 10 and 17 seconds, we're on that thing. And we get in this rut where we just can't turn the machine off. I'm literally amazed when I'm driving and I see somebody holding a steering wheel with two hands. I'm like, what are they doing? Don't they realize they could be trading like on the Forex or crypto right now? Like, what are they doing driving with two hands on a steering wheel? There's so many other things they could be doing. They could be eating a yogurt. They could be doing something else right now. I'm kidding. Some of you are like, please say he's not in the student ministry training our 16-year-olds. I'm not. I've done that, and they moved me on, probably because of my driving habits. I mean, if you're a parent, this isn't just for business people. If you're a parent, if you're a stay-at-home parent, you know what this is like. You're living this 24/7 reality where it's like your only sacred moment is in the bathroom. You're like, maybe my kids won't find me here, and you're in there just like praying like, maybe they won't find me, and then they find that little key thing and they put it in there and they're like, I've got you, I want more from you, Mom. It is overwhelming, the pace in which many of us are living. Churches often do know us favor. Like, you need to sign up for this, you need to go to this, you need to go to the Tuesday night women's group, you need to be at the Wednesday morning prayer thing, and if you're really spiritual, you need to be at this event, and you need to go on this this trip. Go, more. And by the way, also lead an incredibly Jesus winsome life in your community and love your neighbor and have them over weekly for meals and have a great marriage and raise great kids. And it oftentimes just feels exhausting, doesn't it? Am I connecting with anybody this morning? Any of you just feel this way? We just feel like, do we ever just get a break? Like, is this what God really intends? There's a great writer, a man named A.J. Swoboda. I generally, if you have the last name Swoboda, I'm gonna listen to you. I don't know what you're gonna say, but he's from Portland, and this is what he says in his book, Subversive Sabbath. He says, our hyperactivity has produced bodies that are ragged, our spirits thirst. We have an inability to simply sit and be. As we drown ourselves in 24/7 living, we seem to be able to do anything but quench our thirst for the life of God. We've become perhaps the most emotionally exhausted, psychologically overworked, spiritually malnourished people in history. Japanese culture has given this exhaustion a term, karoshi. It's a medical term literally meaning death by overwork. I don't know if this talks to any of you, but it certainly speaks to me. I tend to be one of these people, anytime I take like one of those like strength finders or personality tests, it's like, you like to go, you like to add more, you like to achieve, you like to accomplish, this is in you. And for many of us, that's something God put in us, but for many of us, we simply can't turn it off. We're stuck in the accelerator position. And for many of us, it becomes a badge of honor. We're like, I'm busy. I matter. I'm gonna prove to you my importance in the economy of God by letting you know how busy I am. So we post that and we tweet it and we LinkedIn it and I don't know what else you cool people do, but we do it in such a way that we're like, I'm gonna show you I matter by how busy I am. If you ask my bet, and I would wager not much, but I would at least wager one Chipotle burrito. That's about as much money as I have right now. course, the prices are going up. That being said, I won't add guac, but I would wager at least that if you ask 10 people this week how they're doing, 9 of them will say, man, things are just busy. They're just busy. Like, do you ever talk to somebody that like, there's not much going on. I'm just kind of like relaxed, and I'm enjoying a real cadence of rhythm and rest, and just enjoying the God that created me. And I often take walks at high banks, and I contemplate how the water weaves itself around the rocks there. This is a regular thing that I do. No, that's not what we do, right? We just go. And for many of us, we're at the point of what some writers call burnout. We're exhausted. We're wondering, can I make it one more day? Thomas Merton, a great devotional writer, put it this way. He says, to allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything is to succumb to the violence of our times. Think on that for a minute. To want to go and be everywhere and be everything for everyone is to succumb to the violence of our times. This morning, I have the opportunity of kicking off this great conversation we're going to be having called Recover Your Life. And I've called this message very simply, the cure for burnout, as we talk about God's ancient wisdom of Sabbath. Will you just join me in prayer as we jump in to our study this morning? Father, I think of the words that we just sang, that you are worthy of it all. And God, for many of us, we're not sure what that means. Maybe we're here this morning and we're just looking into what does a friendship with you, Jesus, look like? Maybe we're online and we're just wondering, what are they going to share? What am I going to have to go do in light of this message? And this morning we have the opportunity of hearing this incredible invitation, Jesus, that you give to us, that you want something for us, not from us. That you want to give us the gift of rest. And for many of us, we've bought into the narrative that rest is just escape. I just need to escape the noise. I just need to get away from responsibilities and accountability. But this morning, we're going to hear this wild invitation that you call us to an accountability of rest. You don't just suggest it for us, you command it. And God, what a God would command rest. So may we just hear this wisdom, and not just hear it, Lord, but may we become men and women and families who put it into practice. So God, I pray today would bear fruit as we study your word and we have this conversation. I pray that it would transform lives and marriages and families. God, may we be a transformed people through our rest. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Derek Thompson, a writer for the Atlantic Monthly, wrote an incredible article a few years ago in which he addressed this problem that he called workism. And the title was simply, Workism is Making Americans Miserable. I want you to hear what he says, because it's so insightful that this writer with the Atlantic picks this up. He says, the decline of traditional faith in America has coincided with an explosion of new atheisms. Some people worship beauty. Some worship political identities. You don't know any of them, I'm sure. And others worship their children. But everybody worships something. And workism is among the most potent of the new religions competing for congregants. What is workism, you ask? It's probably not a word you've ever used. This is what he says. It is a belief that work is not only necessary to economic production, but it's also the centerpiece of one's identity and life's purpose. And the belief that any policy to promote human welfare must always encourage more work. The American dream has for more than a century made the U.S. obsessed with material success and the exhaustive striving required to earn it. I am now going to invite the worship team to come up, and we're just going to weep. Thank you, Pastor Thompson. Derek Thompson closes his article. This is in the Atlantic Monthly. He closes it with these words. He says, we've created this idea that the meaning of life should be found in our work, but our desks were never meant to be our altars. That's not from any of the 66 books, right? I was like, bro, that preaches. More hours, more stuff, more guilt if we're not continuing to go, scale, get bigger, see the needle move in the right direction. This is the world that many of us are living. And the shocker of all is that the God of the Bible is not a God who had this in mind. The God of the Bible is not a God who enslaves us to more activity, more just grind till you get there. But that's how many of us are living our lives. And this morning, I have the absolute opportunity to talk to you about this gift from this old school church word called Sabbath. And it's a gift for many of us we've never opened. It's a gift that for many of us, if we're to be honest, we've refused to open it because we're scared of rest. If we rest, we may lose our corner on the market. If we rest, we may realize that we're not going to get as ahead as we, quote, want to be. The word Sabbath literally is this ancient practice that in ancient Judaism, they practiced weekly. All of life revolved around Sabbath. It began at 6 p.m. on Friday nights, and it ended on 6 p.m. Saturdays. Can you imagine taking a real rest for 24 hours in your life? I know this is going to be such a stretch for some of us. Over this conversation over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about putting these things into practice. And when you have to practice something, unlike Allen Iverson, who could be a great NBA great, most of us actually have to practice. We have to put it into practice. Ongoing, weekly cadence, this rhythm. Every week, can you imagine practicing what the people of God have been commanded to practice for centuries? Saying, I'm just going to slow down. We're just not going to jump into this pace of life that is crushing many of us. The ancients would practice beginning at 6 p.m. They would make special loaves of bread, and they would celebrate the labor that God gave them, but they would enjoy one another, like really enjoy one another. You know how most of us enjoy one another? We sit in a room nowadays, and we look at these things. Like, yeah, it's great hanging out. Yeah, this has been fun. Yeah, it's good to see you. Like, this is what we do. Like, they actually looked at each other in the eye, and they ate bread. I mean, Oprah likes bread, and I like bread. I know some of you are on the keto diet, but I love that bread was included in this. So praise God, you could eat bread, loaves of bread. You know, it was a carb-induced, just experience. It was amazing. Now, you would laugh if you know anything about me. I don't rest well. You're like, I can tell you drank way too much coffee this morning. Could you slow your sermon down? You need to just drink decaf. I don't rest well. I think I came out of my mother's womb with a sense of restlessness. Any of you like that? You're just like, that's just like how life can be. And so this has not been a practice where I'm like, this is just naturally my demeanor. I don't know what number you have to be on the Enneagram to really be rest. Maybe it's a 9, but like, this is not me. I like to achieve. I like to go to fast pace. I like to follow Pastor Eric on his motorcycle. He's going way too fast and catch up to him. It's just fun that way. So I'm not talking as a person who has put this practice and, I'm not an expert in this. This is a practice that has, for me, had to be a practice. So I'm not speaking as a professional. I'm speaking as one of you going like, how do we actually do this? Here's a simple definition that I love for what Sabbath means. Sabbath means being able to slow down enough to be able to receive. That's it. There would be a regular cadence in your life and in my life where you can just slow down enough to be able to receive. Where do we get this? I want us to take a look, if you have your Bibles, open to the first book in the Bible. If you're new to the Bible, this is gonna be easy. You just go open a Bible, you go to the first book, and it'll be there in Genesis. And we see so many things in Genesis, but one of the things we have to do so that we read the Bible accurately is think of the context. Moses wrote the book of Genesis, and he didn't write it to battle Bill Nye the Science Guy. He wrote it to a people who were coming out of 400 years of Egyptian slavery. And he wanted them to know who God is and who they are. That's the big theme of Genesis, really, is I want you to know who God is, and I want you to know who you are. So as we read the creation account, that is the thrust of it. This is who God is, and this is who you are. Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 and 3 says this, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished his work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day, made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Isn't it amazing? The God who never gets tired, the God who is a fountain of energy, chose rest. Now, I don't know about you. Some of us can work 168 hours and just keep the machine going. But God's a God of rest. If we're to be honest, we're scared of that. We're intimidated by that. Many of us, we just kind of feel like way more comfort in just moving and activity and going and going. And yet we see Moses tell the people of God, God is a God of rest. It got so bad among the people of Israel because they were just like us. They didn't really trust that rest was part of the program. So God had to remind them, using Moses again in Deuteronomy chapter 5. This is what we read, and so many of us need to hear this. Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy or set apart, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, or your iPhone, nor any residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. It doesn't sound like an option. Like, and for you, Enneagram 3s and you 1s and you strength finders, achievers and leaders and, type A folks, I know you can make it a long ways without doing this. You can. You've got your systems, you've got your rationalizations, you've got your justifications, but it's gonna catch up. It's gonna catch up to you, it's gonna catch up to me, it's gonna form certain patterns of behavior, certain mindsets. This is gonna make your relationships a mess. It's gonna eventually catch up to your body. And for us, the cost of not observing God in this is far higher than saying yes to this gift God has for us. Mark Buchanan, in his book, The Rest of God, says, to refuse Sabbath is in effect to spurn the gift of freedom. It is to resume willingly what we once cried out for God to deliver us from. It is choosing what we once shunned. Slaves don't rest, they can't rest. By definition, they have no freedom to rest. Rest, it turns out, is a condition of liberty. Sabbath is our refusal to go back to Egypt. So this morning, what I want to do in our brief time is paint a picture, 6 pictures of what I believe Sabbath is as we think about what God wants for us. Sabbath is, number 1, a reminder of the big story. As Rick Warren would say, the big story is not you or me. The big story is God. It's his story. Sabbath is this reminder that in the scope of the cosmos, our lives are incredibly tiny. Now that for us, sometimes you're like, I don't like that. I like to think that I'm super important. And Sabbath is this great reminder that I am not the one spinning the world on my finger, that God is. That he is the big deal, that his story is going to outlast my 72, 80, 40, 35, however many years God gives you here on planet Earth, this tiny planet in the cosmos. He is the big story. And we need regular rhythms to just be reminded of the greatness of God. Yes, we need to come to church on Sunday morning. Yes, we need to lift our hands in worship, but we need more than that. We need substantial rhythms where we go, God, this world is all about you. And if we don't have that, we're gonna forget, we're gonna lose perspective. I will lose perspective. I will flip out and freak out like some of you when things don't go my way, because I think they're supposed to go my way. And it's like, wow, I sometimes just need Sabbath so that I would consent to the way of God. So we need Sabbath to be reminded of the big story. Secondly, we need Sabbath because Sabbath is a day to stop. That's not a word that Americans like, is it? We're not like, yeah, I just like to admit that I have limits. How many of you just walk around and you're like, yeah, here's where I'm just really limited. Like your LinkedIn profile does not talk about your limits. It's like, yeah, he's not really good at this. She really doesn't listen well. She's kind of arrogant. Yeah, like, you don't talk about your limits. Like, we don't broadcast that to the world. Nobody put on Facebook, like, here's another time I tried to make bread and it's flat and I got to throw it out. Like, we do not broadcast our limits. But when we stop, something incredible happens is we get awakened to the reality that we are just very limited. But Sabbath is this time where we truly stop. The word in Genesis 2 is Shabbat. It literally means to cease. It means to be complete, not in and of ourselves, but who Christ is in us. So Sabbath is both this mindset and this moment. Sabbath is a day to stop. Number 3, Sabbath is a day with no to-do list. I know I just stepped on some toes right there. You're like, well, you know, I live by a to-do list. Like, how many of you are like to-do list junkies? You're like, yes, and this is part of it right here, and you had better be done quick. Don't worry, I'm gonna be. I gotta get to Costco and Aldi right after this, so end your sermon, preacher boy, and let's move on. Like, Sabbath is a to-do list, or a day with no to-do list. It's just a day, and for many of us, that's like driving a car with no steering wheel. Like, it's like, what would I do? How would I possibly live without a to-do list? Like, this is, don't you know, that's how you get things done in life? Yeah, but this is a day where you just say, we're gonna have no to-do list. I know that's terrifying to most of us. We would rather like just sleep the whole day because like, oh, to wake up and to not have a to-do list, what would I do? Like, embrace that oddness. Do it weekly, and eventually you'll figure it out, right? John Mark Comer in his book, Garden City, says this: the Sabbath is a day where I don't accomplish anything and I don't feel guilty. It's a day where I don't have to get more. It's a day where I enjoy what I already have. That means I'm not scrolling Amazon on that day. It means no to-do lists, no accomplishment, no phone, no tech, no shopping, literally a weekly recalibration. Think of Sabbath like a holy or like a weekly holiday. I know Americans, we tend to get all excited about Thanksgiving Day because we love watching the Detroit Lions lose. But there's also this other thing we do, like we get together and we eat these turkeys that are like 35 pounds. We don't want to ask, how did they ever get that big? Because I'm not sure turkeys are ever supposed to get that big. They probably shoot them with something, I don't know, but anyways, we do that and we just stuff ourselves, and if you're old enough, you'd around 4 p.m., you'd be listening to John Madden, and you're just laying there, and like, it's just this day where you basically have no agenda, and we're like, that's the one day where we're just gonna have no to-do list. Some of you are like, dude, you've obviously never prepared a Thanksgiving meal. You're like, you're right, I've not. So that being said, for some of us, it's that way. But the reality is, it's this picture of what Sabbath should be. Just this weekly rhythm. And I know many of us, we think, I will rest when I take a week vacation. And God's like, no, you're not able to really sustain that. I want a weekly day of rest. I want a weekly day where you turn in your agenda, you turn in your Evernote. Some of you old school people would be like turning in the Palm Pilot or the Franklin Covey planner, whatever you did, and you just say, God, this is your day. I don't know what you have for me, but I know you want me to enjoy the people around me. I know you want me to celebrate. I know you want me to have time of reflection. This is your day. For many of us, that sounds paralyzing. And the truth is, number 4, Sabbath is a declaration of freedom. It's a declaration that we don't ultimately belong to all the voices in our culture, all the voices even within, but we belong to the Lord. Deuteronomy 5, remember that you were, past tense, slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day because, friends, you are now free. You're free from this constant push in our culture and in our world to achieve and to scale more and more and say yes to everything. Tim Keller, in an excellent article, put it this way. He says, the Sabbath day is a reenactment of emancipation from slavery. It reminds us how God delivered his people from a condition in which they were not human beings, but simply units of capacity in Pharaoh's brick production system. Anyone who cannot obey God's command to observe the Sabbath is a slave, even a self-imposed one. Sabbath is therefore a declaration of our freedom. It means that you are not a slave, not to your culture's family's hopes, your medical school's demands, not even to your own insecurities. Wow. Sabbath is a declaration where we declare enough. Enough activities, enough stuff, enough status. It's a day where I say, I don't have to earn my Father's love. It's a day where I say, I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to produce perfect kids. I don't have to sign my kid up for every activity. I have this weekly reminder that in Jesus, I am free and I am enough. And that is not the message that our culture is screaming to any of us. The message is you are never enough, so your life on this tiny little dot called earth is your chance to prove that perhaps you are enough. But you and I need this reminder that only in Jesus are we enough. And that's why, number 5, Sabbath is truly an act of trust. It takes trust to take a break. It takes trust to stop producing. To practice Sabbath is this disciplined and faithful way to work when we are not doing it. And number 6, and finally, Sabbath is a personal invitation from Jesus. And this is where we're going in this whole series. Matthew 11, check this out, this wild and audacious invitation from Jesus. He says to us, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't let, and you'll learn to live lightly, learn to live freely and lightly. This whole series is about asking this fundamental question. How do we learn to live freely and lightly in these unforced rhythms of grace and doing life with Jesus? How do we put this into practice? You may be thinking like, well, I don't know what you're thinking. You may be thinking like, I sure hope to God he's about done. And guess what? I am, so that's a good thing. But you may also be thinking like, how in the world does he envision that we would ever put this into practice? Do you not know anything about my life, Ryan? Like, I wake up at 5 a.m., I have to leave for work at 5:30 a.m., I get back at 7 p.m., I have house duties, and then I have to just do it again and again and again and again, and that is the rut that I'm in. So do you know anything about me? I don't know everything about you, but one thing I know about you is there's still ways that we can put this into practice. And I know you're thinking, well, even on my day off, my 3 kids, they each have 7 soccer games on that day off. So like, I'm an Uber in my part-time to my family. So you're thinking, how do I ever do this? Like, get real. So what I'm gonna do, since you've asked the question, all of you, I'm gonna talk, how do we put this into practice? Because at some point, we have to make this practice very personal. We don't wanna just talk conceptually about practicing Sabbath. I'm gonna get into your world for just a minute and say, here are some ways you can put this practice and make it personal. Because if we don't put this into practice, maybe you heard a good message, maybe you didn't. Maybe you came and you enjoyed your time here and had some coffee. But if we don't put this into practice, this time of us gathering, I would say, has been a waste. I want you to put this into practice, not because the God of the scriptures needs anything from us, but because he has so much for us. So how do we make this practice personal? The good news, friend, is it has to be personal. I love what the Apostle Paul in Colossians 2, verse 16 says. He says, don't let anybody pass judgment on you regarding the way you observe the Sabbath. What I take from that is this invitation that we're not forced into doing what the person beside us is doing and how they observe the Sabbath. We're invited to say, how am I gonna put this principle, this practice, this command from Deuteronomy 5 into practice in my life? How am I gonna say, okay, Jesus, you know my schedule, you know what we're up against, you know all the things that I've gotta do, but I know I wanna be obedient in this area because otherwise I will burn out, or maybe I'm here today, and if I were to be honest, I'm already burned out. So how do we really restore rhythm and rest into our lives? I've got 3 things that I think we repeatedly need to do. The truth of the matter is, if we don't put some things into repetition, we will never have formation to become like Jesus. You know this when you work out, right? Like if you repeatedly do something, generally you can tell I've not repeatedly lifted a lot of weights. I don't have any muscles to show. Now Rich Nathan, you know, he repeatedly lifts a lot of weights. So like, you're like, that's why he's jacked. I'm not, so I apologize. But Without repetition, there's no formation. Without repetition, there's no formation. The person that you are today and the person you are becoming is the result of all the things that you're repeatedly doing. You could desire to have rest, but unless you decide to choose rest, you won't have rest. That goes for you, it goes for me. So what are the things that we can do? The first thing is we can get away. Now, get away does not mean you have to book a Norwegian cruise right now. All year, like, sweet, pull out Expedia, Orbitz, yeah, and you're like, no, dude, I was already there. But that doesn't mean you just have to go on more vacations. Getting away, when I say that, I mean get away from the machines in your life, the voices in your life, and you're thinking, sweet, I'll take a day off Facebook. I'll just be on Instagram. No. I mean, like, literally get away. Like, get away from that stuff. Get away from the noise, get away from the accessibility. Technology allows us, thankfully, to work from anywhere. The problem is now we work from everywhere. It's a great tool, but we have to make a disciplined effort to just, I need to get away. I need a rhythm in my life where I repeatedly, weekly have substantial time away. Secondly, I need to get quiet. We don't live in a world of quiet. We live in a world of chatter, of noise, of 24/7 cable news. Like, this is our world. We know when something happens across the globe instantly. But we need to choose quiet. I would encourage you to head to Meijer or Walmart. They're very inexpensive there. Maybe even Aldi has them in that one section. Pick up a notebook. These are things, they have paper in them, loose leaf, and you know, then there's these things called pens. May have heard of them. You might have bought them for your kids with school supplies. Even a number 2 pencil would work, but you have to sharpen it. So I suggest a pen. And just begin a weekly rhythm of journaling. Now, don't feel the pressure like you need to become John Wesley and have these journals that are going to become books. You don't have to be, and no one probably would ever read it, at least mine. But use them as a tool to just get quiet. Sometimes we need these tools where you're like, Lord, here's really what I'm dealing with. Write out your anxious thoughts. Write out your fears. Write out your concerns. We need to get away. We need to get quiet. But thirdly, we need to get together. When I'm talking about Sabbath, I'm not talking about you and your lonesome just taking long walks along a creek side at High Banks and just going like, I'm just Sabbathing and like hovering above the dirt. Like, one of the gifts of Sabbath is you get together with other people. This doesn't mean this is like your Pinterest moment to like pull out all the, string lights and be like, oh, the, hors d'oeuvres have to be amazing. Like, go to Aldi. If you don't have a quarter, I have one in my pocket. Come up afterwards so you can get a cart, by the way. Buy a $5.99 take and bake pizza and invite people over and be like, y'all, we're eating Aldi pizza together. Like, we're just gonna enjoy one another. We're not gonna put on a program, paper plates. If you have napkins, that may be helpful. It's a little greasy, the pizza, but like, just enjoy one another. Don't put on an event. It doesn't have to be something that you post on all your social feeds, and just enjoy slowing down together. Get away, get quiet, but get together. I will not become more like Jesus in isolation. Like, we need these practices. This is not something that as a pastoral team or that God wants from us. We want this for you. This needs to be a regular, repeated, ongoing rhythm in our lives where we just get away from the noise, where we get quiet. We allow all those noises to go away so that we can begin to process those inner noises that are truly going on in our heart and our minds. And we can work through them with the Lord, but we also need to get together and break bread with others. Can you imagine a church the size of Vineyard Columbus putting this into practice? Can you imagine a church this size of people who have this regular cadence of rest? That when the world around us bumps into people like us, we're at peace. Not because we've finally reached that destination, not because our bank account has finally reached that amount where we can go, now I'm at peace. That's the illusion, right, of money and stuff. Like, you never get to that point. But can you imagine that we go, you know what? I've met with Jesus. I know him. I know he wants something for me far more than he wants something from me. And the restlessness that I've carried around my whole life, I have found rest in the one who made me. And he's put my life in a place of rhythm. He's put my life to where I'm actually have a cadence in this regular, ongoing practice of Sabbath rest. See, Sabbath ultimately is not just this idea, this practice. Sabbath is a person. Sabbath is Jesus himself. One writer put it this way. He said, in creation, God finished the work, and he said, it is finished, so God could rest. But on the cross, Jesus looked at the world around and he said, it is finished, and now we can rest. Isn't that good? I didn't write that, by the way. Somebody else, far more proud. In creation, God looked at all that he'd created and he says, I can rest. And in redemption on the cross, Jesus said, it is finished, now we can rest. What did Jesus say in Matthew 11? Come to me, all who are weary, all who are heavy laden, all who are burdened, and you can have rest.